Hi folks, you're with today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this radio live stream. Might try that again. Hi folks, you're with Tassus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this radio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the relationship between educational outcomes that we're told are really all across the white Western world, and they're running pretty much in parallel, and compare things like various racial IQ levels, not necessarily looking at the causes or what may or may not be the reasons for it, but trying to draw a line or a comparison or a parallel between educational outcomes that allegedly occur and, say, national wealth or national success in terms of having stable, relatively harmonious, low crime, high productivity, wealthy societies with high standards of living. Now, there's a few parallels you can draw. For example, I've noticed that Japanese students have done quite well. There's not that many of them in Australia, but Japan's a rich country. Why would they want to leave? But some do. Particularly those that may want a career in the international department of one of the big Japanese multinationals. Yeah, they may. In fact, they do study overseas. I've mostly been just off the top of my head, I can't think of a single Japanese student that I've regarded academically or scholastically as unimpressive. So that says something in itself. But there are various sort of reasons for that, and I'll come back to those. The Japanese, par excellence, are very good at cramming and swatting. There's almost a wow factor about how intense they are on it, and that accounts, I think, for a lot of their what appears to be academic success. Now, I've worked with a lot of Japanese as well on the ground, where we have to get together and collaborate to make something happen, to produce a result, and to organise things and so on. And I found them a lot less impressive as individuals. They're quite good in a group, and they're quite good at painstakingly putting the building blocks in place to sort of be the launch pad to go to the next phase. They're quite good at that in a group situation. They're very loyal to the cause, very focused and dedicated to the outcome. They want their country, their company, their people to be successful, and they're very mindful of the energies and the efforts they put into that. So overall, they're quite successful, and the success of the Japanese economy and the standard of living they have can't be disputed. It's one of the most outstanding achievements in human economic history, and organisationally they're very impressive. But as individuals, not so much. I haven't found that. Not that there aren't bright people, there are, but they're much harder to find. And the relationship between doing well at school, or college, for example, getting a good pass or a distinction pass and those sorts of things, the PhDs, that's not in itself any indication of how well the individual may do. It can be a reflection of how utterly dedicated they are to cramming and swatting, for example. Could be they've just got a good memory. There can be other factors there and their intense motivation, but they're as much as being motivated, they're also very mindful of not upstaging their boss or boss's boss. So there's almost a timidity in how they approach things for fear of appearing over ambitious or again of upstaging the delicate balance of order that they have in their society, which is itself something to be commended, by the way. You'd rather have order than chaos. Or varying stages of disorder. So that's the Japanese. So I don't think it translates as individuals into much. And the education can't be separated from their dedication, motivation, focus, and their ability to become part of a large organised effort. And that's something that the Japanese are, certainly by my experience, very good at. And again, it's a rich country. Just to sort of give you just a bit of historical backdrop here, the Japanese lived in a feudal society until the 1860s, and when the Americans came around, Commodore Perry, you can sort of look, Google that, and he came along with some small naval flotilla and said, "Hey guys, we want you to trade with us," and it was a fairly sort of gruff encounter. We want you to trade with us, and by the way, we're not going to take no for an answer. And the American technology in that time was way in advance of anything the Japanese had, and the Japanese leaders, very quickly identified that. But they made the decision that if we want to stay a sovereign nation and chart our own course, we have to advance technologically and organisationally and educate, in fact, in every way. And they went about it with zeal and gusto, and again, one of the most incredible economic achievement compressed within a short space of time, incredible economic and industrial achievements in human history, that they did that in such a short space of time, and came out as such a formidable player as a consequence of that. Okay, moving now to the subcontinent, to India. Now, I'm in Australia. I'm constantly told by teachers I know or people involved in the educational establishment how Indians from the subcontinent, how clever they are. They're so clever. Oh, they're so clever. Oh, they're just so nice. They're so smart. And okay, that's the teacher's point of view. And the other teacher I speak not that long ago was saying that in the top classes, it's in some schools in Sydney, in the top classes, there's depending on the area where there may be a lot of Indians, for example, there are only Indians in the top class and no white people. And this is celebrated as some sort of an achievement. I'm fucked if I know how it could be considered an achievement in Australia. I mean, if it's happening in India, fine, but it's a great, somehow it's a great achievement to be heralded in Australia. And how? I don't know. I've even asked, and they can't tell me. It just is, equity. No. So now, if indeed it seems that almost every Indian that comes to Australia and the West is somehow deemed by the Western educational establishments as they're all fucking geniuses, girls too. So all right then, well let's just accept that, say they're all geniuses. Now India has been for a long time, as in before the white folk showed up, India has been a dirt poor basket case. And when the Industrial Revolution was sort of kicking off, India, on a relative basis, fell behind to the to the point where it was like a mega basket case. You walk across dead bodies in the street. It's a society. To me, in my view at least, it's a whisker away from being a total failed state. The policies and the business people there, they rely almost completely on monopolies, and it's incredibly corrupt. The people that there are lazy and parasitic, and so I can see nothing to reckon. If it's a land of geniuses, even if it's at the apex, the top 100 million. Remember, they're pushing 1.4 billion there now. Even if the top 100 million people are all geniuses, surely they could organise a society and have a rich, wealthy, functioning society there, but they can't. It's just rent with social and religious division, and every imaginable dysfunction is evident there and playing a prominent role. So if they are geniuses, they're not geniuses in their own country. Okay, well, maybe they're only geniuses when they leave their country. That wouldn't make any sense. I don't buy that. Now, when I was a kid at school, we had, for a brief time, I was in a school that was super multicultural, and there was a number of Indians there, Sri Lankans too, and Pakistanis, so subcontinent people, and they were all in the lower classes. If they showed any academic ability, then it was exquisitely concealed. So the Indians only started to do well in Australia when political correctness and wokeism and all the other we've got to push white people down type policies started to take effect. It's only then that Indians started to do well. So there's clearly a relationship between the vigorous attempt to elevate non-white people, particularly non-white males, and at that same time the Indian students doing unusually well. And I just don't buy. Now the mix of people coming to Australia did change, whereas the lower caste people were coming, in the well, not all of them, but in that earlier time, whereas now there's a higher proportion of Brahmins who would have better educated parents and more resources and money, and that would affect things, of course. But if again, I don't see why they only do well. Indians, I don't see why they only do well in exams in white countries, but and are hailed as geniuses in white countries, but they're all moronic in their own country. That just doesn't add up. So I reject that out of hand, this idea that they're all geniuses. Now, again, some of the Indians I've known, though, are they're terrified of being an underclass in the white country. So there is a lot of family pressure to study hard and swat and cram. And the Indians, by the way, are also quite good at swatting and cramming, more so than most white kids would be, and I don't doubt that has an effect on exam outcomes, given that dedication and focus and motivation, and just the parental pressure and the pressure of the diaspora that they want to come here and take over, not be second class citizens. So. That would play into that outcome in different ways. In terms of IQ, it's alleged that the Japanese and Chinese, Korean IQ is about 3 to 4% higher than the white IQ. Averages. The Indian IQ is about 2% higher than the white IQ, allegedly. This is like international sort of measuring. Not sure I buy that necessarily, but the access to education of the lower castes and the peasants in some of these places is much less, so you get a higher proportion of brighter people in those IQ tests and those other, maybe not Japan, but certainly in China and India. Whereas in the West, given it's more egalitarian, you would have a higher proportion of lower performing students would go. So that would also affect the outcomes. But now, coming now to having one of the benefits of traveling the world many times over doing business, you get to meet all these people, sit down, talk business with them. You've got to write contracts and agreements, and you've got to do a lot of things together. You have to work quite closely together on some of these things, and so you get to know the capacities, abilities, and the ability to get the job done, to organise, to focus on usage, to comprehend complexity. You get to see that up close. So now, if Indians are displaying genius, then I never saw it. You have to separate the I suppose, particularly the Brahmins. They've got this very Socratic sort of, almost aristocratic air about, we'll discuss philosophy and the universe and this sort of thing. And they are quite good at that. And they've got a certain sort of panache, I guess, in the way they can get into those philosophical conversations and And I do enjoy talking to them over there. It is pleasant, over lunch or dinner to have those comments. But coming to business, which is what I was employed to do, then I never found them impressive. In fact, I found them rather dim-witted in a lot of things, and they struggle to grasp basic complexity. At first, I thought they were pretending not to understand as some sort of negotiating tactic, but I realised no, they actually didn't get it. They were struggling with what I thought were basic concepts. And I'm not a genius, so they're clearly not if they can't grasp these basic concepts. So I was never impressed with them, and never thought they didn't display anything out of the ordinary in terms of intelligence, other than, as I say, that interesting sort of Nietzsche-like sort of sense of philosophy. But not that they weren't pleasant people as well. I did enjoy interacting with them socially when I was traveling around doing business with them. They are nice people to have lunch and dinner with, particularly as you can cover a range of subjects, and they can talk with sufficient knowledge to have an above average level of conversation, provided you don't have to make decisions or do anything or be responsible for anything. Then they're fine. But on the other side, I found them not necessarily woeful, but certainly hard work to do business with. Now, coming to the Chinese, the Chinese also, like the Japanese, are expert crammers and swatters for exams. But by the way, I should add that the Indians, Chinese, and Japanese, they have quite a large alphabet character set. They also have a parallel. I'll use the term alphabet, it's not really the right word, but they also have parallel alphabets in as much as they have a pictorial alphabet and a character alphabet, and they can interchange them. Going around, particularly as you get out of the city in Japanese train stations, as an example, they would use the pictorial representation at one train station, but then they'd use the character, the written description of the name of the station. So when you're someone going around without a guide or an interpreter, and the trains are very punctual, they pull in and you don't have long to read. Oh, that doesn't say such and such. And then you look, oh, fuck, it's one of the pictorial ones. The train's already gone by the time you worked it out. So they've got two quite comprehensive, as in terms of the amount of characters. Alphabets there. I mean, if you add the whole thing in, the characters and all the pictorials and so on, it's close to 800 characters. So you've got to have a large capacity to memorize all that. And I think that, a sprinter exercises their body or their feet or their legs, or whatever. Then you're exercising the brain by having to memorize that much and hold and retain that much information. Train yourself to do it as a standard. That's a normal way of doing business in the education system. And the Chinese are very good at cramming, and I think they've just had more exercise at holding that information in and learning it, memorizing it, and so on. But again, expert crammers and huge family focus on it. They will beat the shit out of their kids if they don't go to the cramming school, or they get late to the cramming school, or something like that. So kids are under huge pressure from the parents, quite brutish sort of pressure in many instances to study their asses off and to swat and to cram and so on. The parents also will go to exceptional lengths, they'll work all night as cleaners or something like that just to get enough money to send their kids to the cramming school. And I don't doubt they do well in exams. The Chinese students that I remember from years ago were not doing well. They only started to do very well when the politically correct attitudes came into the education system, where they had minorities have to be helped. We have to push down straight white males. Only then did the Chinese students do well. But credit where credit's due. I've known. I've worked with Chinese people, and just one guy I'm thinking of here. There was like sort of a technical manual, I suppose you'd call it, and we were going to discuss it the next day, and he was part of that meeting. And he pretty much sat up all night to read that and memorize, most of it, and did a passable job of it. It wasn't like it was a few pages. It was a good 50, 60 pages. As much as you'd say, well, that's a misguided expenditure of energy because you didn't need to do that given what was to be discussed. You can say that. But the fact he had that dedication, that commitment, and that effort, and that rather impressive memorizing sort of capability, then you have to be impressed with that and say, wow, that's pretty good. Um, I wouldn't have done it in as much as he didn't need to do it, and that effort, as I say, was somewhat wasted given what was to be discussed at the meeting. But nonetheless, he did it. So that has to be accepted as in some ways a virtue, I suppose. But again, coming now to if all these Chinese students are doing so well, and you've probably mostly, I think, you've heard of the drama at Harvard and Yale and all that, where they're trying to actually stop Asians or prevent Asian students from getting in, just so they can elevate black students who have got an IQ of 80 or something, just for equity. So I mean, it goes to show you how insane this political correctness is. But the Chinese that I've worked with, and I've worked with a lot of them, I shouldn't. Yes, some of them have been impressive. I can't write them all, but China as a country, again, for hundreds upon hundreds of years, has been a basket case. And if it wasn't for Western globalist stooge flunky sending all Western jobs and manufacturing offshore to China, if it wasn't for that, China would still be a basket case. It's only the infusion of Western jobs, factories, and capital that's brought China to where it is today. China wouldn't be near where it is today if it wasn't for that. It's just been a useful hub or spoke in the globalist reordering of things, and it just managed to be in the position of beneficiary because it had iron control of the society through the one-party state communists, and they can artificially keep wages low, artificially bring peasant labour from the interior into the city to stoke the factories and so on. If it wasn't for that, China wouldn't have been a useful pawn in the globalist game. But so if the Chinese are all so fucking smart, then you don't see it in their own economy or the ordering of their society or the structure of their society, be it organisationally, politically, or industrially, or technically. Not that they're without virtue, but on the whole, just if there are so many fucking geniuses there, why is the place still not doing well, other than the handouts the West has given it? So this and having worked with Chinese, and there's none of them. Yeah, I mean, if they've been born in the West, grown up in the West, so on, that they're different. The ones from Hong Kong exposed to the West for a while, they're different as well. But the Chinese that sort of come here from China, they're unimpressive. I can't think, not a single one of them has been impressive. They've got, the Communist Party generals who've got their monopolies and they're getting gazillions of dollars just from corrupt practices. They act like they're patrician gods and so on. But when you get down to business, they've got, as far as I can see anyway, I haven't been impressed, I don't think, with any of them. They've got a very different understanding of how social organisations should be, the relevance of the law, the relevance of commercial contracts, and they've got this. They're absolutely terrified of losing face and appearing stupid, so they overdo the tough guy image. But I don't see it anywhere. I haven't worked with, I think, a single Chinese person from mainland China or really for Taiwan for that matter, and found impressive people. I just haven't met them. Maybe they're there and I haven't met them perhaps, but if they are so smart academically, it definitely does not translate into any other success or field of endeavour that makes them stand out. So I'd say that they're only good at cramming and swatting and really not a whole lot else. Not that you don't find bright Chinese people, you do. I mean, they're 1.35 billion or something. Of course, you're going to find some bright ones, but given the in America, Britain, and in Australia, how Chinese students are all, alleged to always be at the top. And in some cases, something like 40% plus of the students going into some of these universities on based on alleged pass marks, they're Chinese. Now, given that the Chinese may only make up 15% of the students, yet they make up 40% of the places taken in university. So it can't be denied. I mean, they're obviously good at swatting, but I don't know how much of this is part of the politically correct thing. And I recently did a video. I was looking at the top 100 or 100 students going to, or the amount of students rather being accepted at a particular university. I think it was in Australia. And somehow we're to believe that only 7% of them were straight white males. I mean, you're right. I mean, get fucked. So it goes to show what a huge part wokeism and assistance to minorities is playing. The only thing the Western education system seems to be focused on now is making sure that as few straight white males as possible ever get out of junior high school. You've been with Tacitus throughout your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.